Alpha Queen Zelie was alone in the war room long after her warriors had gone. Her blood-stained armor lay stripped and stacked like shed skin near the door. The silence pressed against her skull, too complete, too heavy. Her muscles burned, her jaw ached, and her chest felt as though it carried the weight of every life she had spared, and every one she hadn't. Screams of battle, the flash of blood, the young warrior's wide eyes before he fell. They lingered in her mind like a violin strung too tight. Her wolf paced beneath her skin, restless and agitated. The war had been won, her pack safe, her name lifted in songs outside these walls. But here, inside, she felt hollow, and peace evaded her. Then the smell hit her. A soft, moss-green hoodie draped over a chair at the far end of the table. The fabric was worn, slightly frayed, and carried the quiet, steady scent of Omega Rowan. Not sharp, not sweet, just calm, like earth after rain, like quiet mornings, like something that did not demand anything from her. She picked it up and inhaled. Her shoulders loosened before she realized they'd been tight. Her wolf stilled. The frantic pounding of her heart softened. For the first time since the battle ended, her chest felt lighter. The chaos within her stilled, suspended by nothing more than a piece of fabric and a scent she could never forget. Embarrassment pricked at her. She straightened abruptly, lowering the hoodie as if it had burned her. An Alpha did not take comfort from an Omega's belongings, not like this. "I'll return it," she murmured to the empty room. "Tomorrow." Zelie carried Omega Rowan's hoodie from the war room like a secret, an anchor she hadn't known she needed. Rowan moved quietly down the stone corridor, the morning light just brushing the floors. He had worn his soft moss-green hoodie after last night's patrol now. It was gone. First stop, the war room. He retraced his steps carefully, scanning the floor, the chairs, the table where the maps and armor had been. Nothing, no sign of it. His wolf stirred, tense, restless. Hoodies didn't vanish. "Strange," he muttered, running a hand over his face. He checked the rest of the castle methodically. His wardrobe, 1 hoodie, 2 hoodies, 3, all accounted for. But not the soft moss-green one, the one he'd worn after patrol last night. He frowned, pulling out the rest, checking tags, colors, the folds. Nothing. "Not a trace," he muttered under his breath, almost to himself. His wolf prickled beneath his skin, alert. Rowan's boots echoed as he made his way to the laundry room. He asked the cleaning manager if anything had been misplaced. "All garments are accounted for," she said with a polite smile. "Everything logged." Her calm tone did nothing to settle the sinking feeling in his chest. It was old, nothing special, but one of his favorites. "Check the closets, the drawers," she asked. "I've searched everywhere." He said, puzzled, "It's odd. Nothing like this has ever happened before." She shrugged. "Perhaps it was misplaced temporarily. Things get shuffled after battle." Rowan's hands clenched at his sides. His wolf growled low, restless. No, he knew the difference. Something was wrong. But he knew for certain whoever had taken his hoodie wouldn't stay hidden forever. Rowan adjusted the saddle on a horse, his hands steady despite the unease curling in his chest. Morning duties were meant to ground him, but today every step felt off balance, every corridor echoing a little too sharply. He finished checking the stables and wiped his hands on his trousers, then turned toward the inner halls of the castle. His path naturally took him past the Queen's chambers. He almost didn't notice it at first, the faint pull at the edge of his senses. He slowed without meaning to. He had walked this corridor 100 times, delivered reports, carried supplies, kept his head down, his scent muted out of respect. But today, his steps faltered, the scent drifted through the door like a quiet confession. Of all the wolves beneath this roof, it was his scent that had found its way into the Alpha Queen's chambers, not faint, not imagined, woven into the stone and wood, warmed by proximity, familiar in a way that made his chest tighten. Rowan's breath caught. He stood very still, as if the walls themselves might accuse him of trespass. That was impossible. An Omega's scent did not linger in an Alpha Queen's chambers by accident, and yet there it was. But how had it gotten there? The cleaning staff were meticulous. They did not misplace garments, especially not an Omega's belongings in the Alpha Queen's chambers. That kind of mistake earned dismissal, if not worse. Rowan rubbed his jaw, unease settling deep in his bones. The urge to open the door, to look, rose so sharply his wolf flinched, restless and insistent. He exhaled and forced himself to step back. An Omega did not cross the threshold of the Alpha's private chambers. That was not his place. Still, the scent followed him, clung to his thoughts, his chest, the steady beat of his heart. Something had changed, and he intended to find out. The throne room was already tense when Alpha Queen Zelie entered. Stone faces turned toward her, elders, generals, advisors who spoke of lives like numbers and peace like a bargain. She listened as they spoke of borders, of armies larger than hers, of a neighboring Alpha whose power had grown by the season. "Their forces outnumber ours," one elder said carefully. "A union would prevent bloodshed." Zelie's jaw tightened. The Alpha in question had already asked for her hand. She had refused. He had not taken it well. "He is offended," another added. "A marriage would secure peace." Zelie said nothing, but her wolf bristled. She would not be traded like land. Not for power, not for fear. Before the debate could deepen, the doors burst open. A woman stumbled in, breathless, eyes wild with terror. "My queen!" she cried, dropping to her knees. "Please, please help me!" Guards moved to stop her, but Zelie raised a hand. "What is it?" she asked. "My husband," the woman sobbed. "He means to give our daughter away. She's only 15. The man followed, face stiff, eyes lowered. When Zelie turned to him, he spoke quickly. "I owe a debt. The man I owe wants the girl in exchange." The room erupted. Whispers, outrage, disgust. Something cold settled in Zelie's chest. "I will buy your daughter instead," she said evenly. "You will use the money to clear your debt." Silence fell. The man nodded almost immediately, too quickly. The woman broke, clinging to Zelie's feet. "Please, my queen, don't take my child from me. She's all I have." The man scoffed. "What use is a girl?" he muttered. "I'll take the money." Zelie turned to him, her voice steel beneath calm. "Your daughter stays with her mother. You will work in this castle until every coin is repaid, every wage accounted for." He bowed and did not dare protest. By the time the chamber emptied, Zelie felt drained. Her mind, heavy with the burdens of the throne, could not quiet the endless thoughts racing through it. Marriage ultimatums, war threats, children sold like goods, she carried it all. As she left the chamber, the weight pressed harder. The halls felt too narrow. Her wolf was unsettled, pacing anxiously beneath her skin. Then she passed Omega Rowan's room. The scent reached her before the thought did. Soft, earthy, calm. Her steps slowed. She looked around. No guards, no servants. Just quiet. Zelie slipped inside. The room smelled like him. Linen, rain, something warm and steady. She went straight to the wardrobe, fingers barely trembling, and drew out a cerulean hoodie, cool blue, worn soft with use. She lifted it and breathed in. Her frantic heartbeat eased. Careful not to be seen, she pressed it beneath her dress, holding it close for a moment before slipping out as quietly as she had come. In her chambers, she laid it beside the moss-green hoodie already on her bed. 2 stolen comforts. 2 quiet truths. Zelie lay down between them, the scent wrapping around her like a promise. Her body finally rested, her wolf stilled. The constant loop of thoughts stopped, like a leaking tap finally fixed. Everything that had felt too loud in her world fell quiet. She was expected to be everything to everyone, and the hoodies, soft, worn, familiar, made her feel like herself again. For once, she wasn't alpha, or queen, or weapon, just a woman, free of staff, crown, and expectation. Something felt different the moment Rowan stepped into his room. A faint scent lingered in the air, sweet and spicy, vanilla and saffron, undeniably Alpha Queen Zelie's. Realization hit him like a weight. He went straight to his wardrobe, where his clothes were always sorted by color, lined up by shade and weight. Order was comfort. Then he noticed it. The cerulean hoodie was gone. He froze, fingers brushing the fabric of the remaining garments. No, that couldn't be. He didn't want to imagine Alpha Queen Zelie taking his hoodies. She could buy thousands. She didn't need his. Yet somehow she had taken his. What made them so special? His wolf stirred beneath his skin, restless and alert. Curiosity tangled with disbelief, a faint heat curling in his chest. He wanted to confront her, knock on her door, demand answers. But that would be reckless, dangerous, foolish. So he sat on his bed, staring at the empty space where the hoodie should have been. Her scent, his scent, lingered, insistent and undeniable. He couldn't stop thinking about it. Why was the Alpha Queen, the ruler of their pack, stealing his hoodies? She had never been one to act strange, but lately Rowan couldn't make sense of it. He had to be sure he wasn't losing his mind. He walked past her chambers that evening, hoping his intuition would be wrong, but his scent lingered there, unmistakable, like cologne that never faded. Then he heard it. Soft, frantic scuffs against the floor, sharp breaths, and a low, ragged growl, Zelie's wolf pacing beneath her skin. "Alpha Queen?" he called softly. "Are you okay?" No answer. He pushed the door open just enough to slip inside. Zelie was there, but not present, lost in her own world. Her hair tumbled wildly around her shoulders, her steps erratic, pacing the room like she was chasing something invisible. Words spilled from her lips, frantic and urgent. "That arrogant Alpha Zachary would rather burn my kingdom to the ground than accept my rejection," she said, lifting her chin even as panic tightened her chest. Rowan's brows furrowed. She was speaking aloud what she'd never admit to anyone else. Fear, fury, exhaustion, the crushing weight of everything on her shoulders. She didn't even notice him, as if he weren't there. Then his eyes fell on the bed. Moss green, cerulean, carefully folded. His hoodies, it hit him all at once. She was using them, not casually, not for decoration. She needed them, needed him. He pulled off his dark grey hoodie, hoping it might give her some comfort. Gently, he reached for her hand. She moved past him, eyes fixed ahead. He might as well have been invisible. Her pacing didn't falter. Her words didn't stop. Rowan's wolf growled low beneath his ribs. He could not leave her like this. He wanted to call a beta the healer, but that would only expose her weakness. The council would argue she wasn't fit to rule, even though she had won more battles than any other ruler, and her pack respected her leadership. He wouldn't allow that happen. Instinctively, he stepped closer, wrapping his arms around her shoulders, chest pressing against hers. His scent, steady, earthy, calm, flooded her senses. Slowly her frantic movements faltered, her breath hitched, and the storm in her chest began to settle. Once he felt her start to steady, he whispered softly, warm and certain, "Alpha Zelie, look at me. You're safe. I'm here." Her hands trembled. Awareness returned. She saw him, grounding her, unwavering. "I'm sorry, Alpha," he murmured immediately, pulling back slightly. "I shouldn't have—" She shook her head, hair falling into her eyes. For a long moment they simply stood there, staring, as if the world had shrunk to just the two of them. No crown, no throne, no expectations. Just her, human and raw, and him, the Omega whose presence had become her quiet lifeline. Omega Rowan folded the hoodie he'd taken off earlier, aligning it with the moss green and cerulean hoodies already arranged on her bed. Their eyes met across the short distance. Neither spoke. Zelie's stomach twisted. Her cheeks flamed. He knew. Of course he did. They were on her bed. He must have seen them. Her dirty little secret. She had been the one taking his hoodies all along. And he said nothing. Rowan returned to his room and sat at the edge of his bed, still in the white t-shirt he'd been left in after giving her his hoodie, replaying what had just occurred. Alpha Queen Zelie had stilled in his arms, as if something inside her had finally locked into place. He was just an ordinary wolf, the lowest rank in the castle, yet he knew now. His scent was what calmed her. He had to protect her secret. For the times he couldn't be there, his hoodies could offer the same quiet steadiness, a comfort when the crown felt too heavy. So he took the little money he had, saved for necessities, and bought 10 cheap hoodies. Soft, plain, nothing special. Muted blues, soft greys, deep greens. He wore them in rotation, during patrols, training, even to sleep, letting his scent sink deep into the fabric. Rain, earth, calm. Days passed quietly, intentionally. When he was certain, he folded them carefully, the way he always folded his own clothes. He found a box, cheap but neat, and tied it with a ribbon left behind at the stall. Then he left it outside her door. No name, no explanation, just quiet protection, waiting for when she needed it most. The council's ruling pressed on Alpha Queen Zelie like a vice. 8 elders had voted for her to wed Alpha King Zachary, claiming it was necessary for peace. Only 2 had opposed the union, but their voices were powerless against the majority. Now her pack would pay the price. Communities would burn, families would die, innocent blood would stain her hands, all for a man she could never love, a tyrant who saw her not as a partner but as a bargaining chip. Her footsteps echoed down the castle hall, heavy and measured. The walls seemed narrower, the torches harsher, each step pressing the weight of the throne more firmly onto her shoulders. Then it reached her, a familiar grounding scent, earthy and steady, pulling at her like a magnet. It grew stronger as she neared her chambers. She rounded the corner and stopped. Boxes sat neatly beside her door. For a moment she simply stared at them. Slowly she crouched and lifted the lid of the first box. Omega Rowan's scent rushed out, warm and steady, unmistakable. It wrapped around her senses, chased the tightness from her chest, quieted the troubling thoughts that refused to leave her alone. Inside were hoodies, folded with care, Different colors, different weights. Her throat tightened. Even after seeing the ones she had taken, he hadn't confronted her, hadn't exposed her. No one had ever done anything like this for her. It made her feel safe, seen, protected. She arranged the hoodies around her bed like a protective nest. Sliding in between them, she let his scent envelope her senses. Sleep came quickly. No nightmares of war, no visions of her kingdom aflame. Only tranquility, like morning sunlight dancing across a still river, calm and steady. The next morning, Zelie found Rowan cleaning the stables. "Walk with me," she said, already moving toward the garden. Rowan dropped the brush and fell into step beside her. His chest tightened. Had he overstepped? Had the hoodies offended her? She spoke first. "Why are you protecting me?" He considered her question before answering. "That's my duty, my queen," Rowan said quietly, "to protect you when the crown grows heavy." Zelie stopped. The words settled over her like a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying alone. She turned to him, eyes sharp but searching. "So you think I need your protection?" she asked, voice steady but curious. He hesitated for a heartbeat, meeting her gaze. "Of course not, my queen," he said softly. "Only comfort. I'm not as powerful as you. I can't carry the crown for you, but I can be here, steady as a rock, when you need it." Zelie studied him, her eyes searching. No one had ever said something like this. Not a council member, not a commander, not anyone sworn to her authority. "I appreciate that," she admitted, her voice quiet, almost caught off guard by the truth in his words. A long pause stretched between them. Then she asked carefully, "You're not angry that I took your hoodies?" Rowan's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Angry? No, you needed them." Her brow furrowed. "I didn't have the right." "Everything in this castle belongs to you, Queen Zelie," he said steadily, her eyes locked on his. "Not your personal possessions?" He nodded, eyes steady on hers. The air between them shifted. He had seen her at her most vulnerable, and yet he said nothing to shame her. For the first time in years, Zelie felt seen, truly seen, and protected. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "For the hoodies, and for keeping my secret." "Any time, Queen Zelie," he said. She hesitated, then asked softly, "How do I repay you?" "I didn't do it to be repaid," he said simply. A faint smile curved her lips. "You keep surprising me, Omega." He allowed himself a small smile in return. "And you keep giving me reasons to." She paused, then met his gaze fully. "Have dinner with me tonight. I'd like to know more about you." Rowan bowed his head slightly, heart hammering. "Yes, my queen." The evening air was cool, as Rowan sat at a table laid in the palace's finest linen, set in a quiet corner of the queen's courtyard. Dishes he couldn't name, rich, fragrant, extravagant, were arranged carefully at the center. Torches flickered along the stone paths, their light soft against ivy and pale marble. Rowan bowed as they sat. He kept his gaze on the table a moment longer than necessary, steadying his breath. "I hope everything is to your liking," Zelie said at last, her tone calm, curious. He glanced at the spread, then back at her, a faint, almost shy smile touching his mouth. "This is the first time I've eaten food that costs more than my monthly pay," he admitted. She chuckled. "I like that you don't hold back your thoughts. It's refreshing." Rowan smiled, a little unsure of himself. The grandeur around them still foreign. He felt out of place, but he didn't let it show. She watched him over her cup. the way his shoulders eased, the quiet deliberateness in his movements. "Tell me about yourself, Rowan," she said. "Not as an Omega, not as someone sworn to me, just you." He hesitated. Speaking of himself did not come easily, but there was no judgment in her eyes, only interest. "I've worked in many places," he said slowly. "Castles, villages. I learned to notice what others don't, patterns, habits, the spaces between things." He glanced up. "It keeps me alive." "Useful," she said lightly. He inclined his head. "Rightly so, my queen." She hesitated, then said softly, "Please, call me Zelie." Rowan blinked, caught off guard. "Are you sure, my queen?" "Yes," she said, meeting his eyes. "You have no idea what you did for me. I sleep well now. Your scent, it steadies me." Relief crossed his face before he could stop it. "I'm glad I could help my—" He paused, then corrected himself. "Zelie." Her lips curved. "That's better." She studied him for a moment, then asked casually, "Do you have a partner, Rowan?" He shook his head. "No." She frowned slightly. "Hard to believe. A handsome man like you, and no one is trying to claim your attention?" He smiled, a little sheepish. "I've been too busy to notice." Her expression softened even further. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for treating me like I'm not invincible." Rowan met her gaze and gave a small, genuine smile, one that held respect, understanding, and something deeper he didn't dare name. The moment lingered between them, warm and unguarded. For a while, neither spoke. The garden felt far from the rest of the castle, sealed off, almost unreal, as if the world beyond its walls had paused. Then a horn sounded in the distance, loud and urgent, tearing through the stillness. Zelie was on her feet instantly, her posture straightened. The softness in her expression vanished, replaced by focus. Alpha instinct snapped into place like armor. A guard came running, bowing sharply. "My queen, Alpha King Zachary's forces have been spotted at the Eastern Watch. They're moving fast, expected at our borders by dawn." Zelie didn't hesitate. "Tell the lieutenant to ready the warriors. Have the town crier warn everyone. No one leaves their homes unless I give the order." "Yes, Alpha Queen." The guard rushed off. Zelie turned to Rowan, her expression already sealed behind command. "Go inside, now. Stay safe." Rowan bowed without protest and retreated into the castle. Zelie pivoted and headed straight for the war room. By the time she entered, her warriors were already there, armored, armed, shields strapped to their backs. Her lieutenant stood at the table, maps spread wide, the tension in the room sharp and electric. Zelie stood before them, calm, focused. "They'll hit the eastern plains first," her lieutenant said, pointing to the markings. "Zachary's numbers outweigh ours nearly 2-1. A murmur rippled through the room. Zelie lifted her hand. Silence fell instantly. "We don't meet him head-on," she said. "We draw him out, split his forces, keep the fighting away from the towns." One of the commanders hesitated. "And if he pushes through anyway?" Her gaze hardened. "Then we hold. We protect our people first, always. No fear, no doubt. Just resolve." Dawn broke red. Steel met steel on the eastern plains. The clash was thunderous, shields splintering, war cries ripping through the air. Zelie moved through the battlefield like a force of nature, precise and relentless, her presence steadying her warriors even as blood darkened the earth. But Zachary's army kept coming. Every fallen warrior tightened something in her chest. This couldn't continue. She saw it clearly now. This was exactly what he wanted. To drown her kingdom in blood until she broke. Zelie raised her blade high. "Fall back," she commanded. "All units, fall back." Her warriors obeyed instantly, retreating in disciplined lines. She stepped forward alone, her voice carried across the battlefield, sharp and commanding. "Alpha King Zachary, this ends now." Zachary strode forward, armor gleaming, a cruel smile on his face. "So," Zachary called, "you finally come to your senses." "This war is between you and me," Zelie said, her voice cold. "Leave my pack out of it." "You don't tell me what to do, Zelie. Look around. You're outnumbered." "I know. That's why I challenge you to a duel." Zachary laughed, eyes scanning her forces. "A duel? You actually think you stand a chance?" "Don't tell me you are scared," he laughed. "Fine. This will be easy." Zelie lifted her chin, unwavering, her gaze sweeping over both armies. "If I win, you leave my kingdom untouched, forever. And if I win," he asked, voice low and dangerous, "I'll marry you." A hush fell across the battlefield, as if the wind itself had stopped to listen. The duel began. Zachary attacked with raw, overwhelming power, each swing meant to crush and dominate. His strikes were fast and heavy, driven by arrogance and strength, but each missed blow forced him to overexert. Zelie didn't try to meet him with brute force. She ducked, rolled, and used precise footwork, letting his own momentum carry him past her. The crowd watched, breath held, as she weaved between his attacks, redirecting his swings, waiting for him to tire himself out. Every failed strike made him angrier, slower, and less precise. That was when the calm slipped. For a heartbeat, Zelie's mind betrayed her. The steady grounding she relied on vanished, and the weight she'd been holding at bay rushed in all at once. Who was she fighting for? The council who would trade her freedom for peace. The pack who trusted her with their lives. Rowan, the Omega who knew her weakness and had guarded it as fiercely as any secret. One mistake, one slip, and everything she had built would burn. Her step slowed. Just a fraction. Zachary sensed it. He lunged, driving forward with brutal force, steel cutting the air where she should have been. The blow clipped her guard, jarring her arm and forcing her back a step. The crowd gasped. From the sidelines, Rowan went still. He saw the signs, the way her focus folded inward, the way hesitation crept where instinct should rule. She was losing ground, not to Zachary's strength, but to the war inside her own mind. Rowan didn't think. As both armies held their breath, he pulled the small vial from inside his coat, the scent he had infused from his own skin, prepared for moments like this. He uncorked it and flung it toward her. The glass shattered against the ground near her boots. The scent hit her before the sound of shattering glass faded, warm, earthy, steady, familiar, like sunlight finding her after days of rain. Zelie inhaled sharply, and the world snapped back into place. The noise in her head dulled. The pressure in her chest eased. Her breath steadied, instinct sliding back where it belonged. Her footing corrected mid-step. Her grip tightened with clarity instead of strain. Zachary's next strike met empty air as she slipped past it, renewed precision guiding her movements. He frowned, sensing the shift too late. Zelie turned his force against him, letting his anger carry him forward while she stayed light, controlled. His breaths grew heavier, his swings lost their edge. She waited, then struck. His wrist, and sent his sword flying across the dirt. Steel clattered to the ground. Before he could recover, Her blade was at his throat. Silence fell. Zachary froze, chest heaving, disbelief written across his face. Around them, 2 armies stood motionless, breath held, waiting for the end that had already come. "It's over," Zelie said, her voice calm, unshaken. Zachary's jaw clenched. Slowly, he raised both hands in surrender. A roar broke loose. Her pack, voices rising in relief and triumph, shields striking ground, warriors calling her name. The sound rolled across the field like thunder, fierce and proud. Zelie stepped back, lowering her sword only when the Alpha King bowed his head in defeat. The pact was sealed. Her kingdom was safe. She turned from the fallen tyrant and scanned the crowd. Her gaze found Rowan. He stood at the edge of the field, shoulders tense, eyes fixed on her as if he were still holding his breath. When their eyes met, something quiet passed between them. Relief, understanding, gratitude too deep for words. Later, when the noise had faded and the wounded were tended, Zelie found him in his tent at the edge of the camp, far from the celebration. She kissed him before she could stop herself. Light, breathless, real. Rowan froze for half a heartbeat, then responded, deepening the kiss instinctively, as if he'd been waiting for permission he no longer needed. When Zelie pulled back, her eyes shone, not with tears, but pride. "Thank you," she said softly, "for saving me." "You saved us all, my queen." She huffed a quiet breath. "I told you to call me Zelie." "I know," he said, a small smile curving his lips. "But I like calling you my queen. It makes my wolf happy." She studied him, then stepped closer, resting her forehead against his. A silence settled, gentle, charged. "What does this mean for us?" Rowan asked quietly. "I'm just an Omega. The Council, the Pack, they won't accept this." "You are more than an Omega," Zelie said without hesitation. "You are my anchor, my solid ground." He opened his mouth, but no buts. She kissed him again, firmer this time, certain, and for once Rowan didn't question it. The sun barely pierced the smoke still curling from the outskirts of the battlefield when whispers started. Someone had seen Rowan leaving Zelie's tent at dawn. A few soldiers spoke of it aloud, others repeated it in hushed tones. By mid-morning, the rumor had travelled across the camp like wildfire, the Queen and the Omega, together. Zelie ignored it at first, focusing on her duties, helping tend to the injured, debriefing with her soldiers, but by the time she reached the throne room, the tension was palpable. Guards shifted uneasily, council members fidgeted, and her warriors cast curious glances at the Omega standing beside her. 10 elders stared at her, all wary. "Alpha Queen," the eldest began, voice sharp but respectful. "We've heard troubling reports, rumors about you and Rowan. Could you clarify what is happening?" Zelie's gaze swept over the council, then landed on Rowan. He stood straight, silent, eyes steady on her. She took a deep breath. "Henceforth, Rowan is more than an Omega. He is my mate." Murmurs rippled through the room. Some elders looked shocked, others skeptical. One cleared his throat. "But the Pack? Is this proper? Your choice could cause unrest." "Show me the section in our law that states an Alpha cannot be with an Omega," Zelie said, her voice firm as her gaze swept the council. "Rowan stood beside me when I needed him most. He is part of this kingdom, not by rank, but by loyalty and action. He protected me while I protected this kingdom in battle. I would not be standing here without him, and neither would any of you." The chamber stilled. One elder spoke before the others could stop him. "And that," he said carefully without retreat, "makes him your weakness, my queen. A vulnerability our enemies would not hesitate to exploit." A sharp intake of breath rippled through the room. Rowan stiffened beside her. Zelie's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in something colder. She straightened. "No," she said, voice calm, dangerous in its certainty. "It makes him my strength." She looked straight at the elder, and without raising her voice, said, "Enemies will always look for leverage. If it is not Rowan, it will be something else. Vulnerability does not make a ruler weak. Surrendering to it does. I will not rule this kingdom by cutting myself off from those who have earned my trust," she continued. "Rowan has proven himself worthy many times over. An Omega who saw what his Alpha needed to win and provided it. No Beta commander or healer saw me as he did." Her voice did not waver. "My wolf chose him because he saw beyond the crown and the title." Silence followed Zelie's words. Some of the elders exchanged glances. One frowned, another exhaled slowly, as though conceding a battle they could not win. At last the eldest inclined his head. "Your will is clear, Alpha Queen." Another spoke more cautiously. "The pack will follow, as they always have." Not everyone looked convinced, but none dared challenge her again. Shortly after, the council members left one by one, murmuring among themselves, their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. The throne room felt quieter with each departing figure, the tension lingering like a thick fog. Rowan stayed where he was, standing slightly behind her. His eyes followed her every move, wary yet proud. Zelie turned, her gaze settling on him. "Now everyone knows," she said quietly, letting the weight of her words hang between them. "And that means things change." He nodded, jaw tight. "I expected as much." "You're going to learn to fight," she continued, firm but practical. "To protect yourself. I won't always be beside you." Rowan met her eyes and nodded. He reached for her hand, grounding himself, his voice low and earnest. "I don't regret this. The fact that you chose me, a low-ranking wolf, it's an honor." Zelie's expression softened immediately. "Oh, Rowan," she said gently, "you need to stop thinking of yourself that way. You are more than that. You always have been." He searched her face, warmth and disbelief flickering in his eyes. "May I kiss you, my queen?" She smiled. "You don't need permission, Rowan." Then, softer but no less certain, "You are mine now, if that's what you want." His grin was instant. He stepped closer, hands warm and sure at her waist. "I very much want that." He kissed her, soft at first, reverent, then deeper, more urgent, as though he'd been holding himself back all day, like he'd been starving for this moment.